How about now? What? Who clicked on mute?
Yes, I can hear you now.
Perfect. Thank you. Thank you, Manshu. All right, guys, my name is Arun. I'm from the Hollywood team. Today we'll be talking about some Visual Studio tips and tricks. Not all of this you'll probably use in your daily coding session, but some of them are like good to know. So that's the agenda, and also that's the end of my slide. I don't even see a point in going through them. We'll just go through them in code. So let me make this a little smaller. Okay, so the first one I kind of talked about in my previous session towards the end of the previous session is this feature called find. So let me show that. I have a standard toolbar enabled here, and at the end it says standard toolbar options, add new button, add or remove buttons, and that's the feature I'm talking about. It says Control D. That's the shortcut on my box, and that's the text box that comes up for that. So as it says find. So I can do view bag. Yeah, of course it finds it, but it's not that helpful, right? Because my control find, I mean whatever control F, is much faster. It's live. It's doing all those things. So I don't know why it's called as find, because it does other things better than finding. Especially if you don't have ReSharper, you can do .cs. Let me close this file. So I've just entered a file name there, and Control O is the shortcut key for file open. So right here I do Control O, it just opens that. I can just do a couple more, right? So it's kind of fast to open files from here. You can also do other things. So I have 3 controllers and a couple of views here. I have 1, 2, and 3 index CSHTML files. So if I try to open, there are 3 of them, so it picks up the first one. But if you want to open anything specific, you can just provide some path there and say open, and then you'll get that file. So you can open files. Of course, if you have ReSharper, you can do it much faster. If you have ReSharper, I have ReSharper shortcuts enabled, so I can just do HC. It does camel casing, so I can do that. So, but if you don't have ReSharper, for some reason you don't want to enable ReSharper, this is probably the next best thing. You can, however, open it here. This is also nice. You can look for action methods and all those things in this one, but this is another alternative as well. The other thing this can do is, let me just bring up one. I'm typing class name dot method name, right? I'm just typing, it's case sensitive. I'm typing class name dot method name here. It's not just related to or limited to controllers and actions. It's just class name dot index name. Sorry, it's just class name and method name. So you know that in Visual Studio, if I get some light, F9 is the shortcut key for adding breakpoints, removing breakpoints. So here I can do F9 and it'll get me a breakpoint, right? So I've just typed a class name and a method name. I pressed F9 and I got so I got a breakpoint there. You can do that for depending on what version of Visual Studio you're in. So let me open that file first. So let me clear up all the breakpoints, and I'm going to close this. So if I'm lucky and I do F9, I just did F9 on that line, I should be seeing a breakpoint added there. So 2 things. One is it's case sensitive, so your class name should actually match, class and method name should actually match. And the second thing is it only adds the breakpoint, it doesn't remove the breakpoint. So why do you require this? Well, sorry?
This is a question from.
Sure.
Is it for 2012 or 2013?
Well, okay, good question. This feature, most of the things I'm going to talk about, this feature has been available in 2010 as well. But I don't know why Microsoft did not make a big news about this, because it's kind of useful, it's powerful. They never spoke about this. I was watching a session, and I mentioned this in the last one too. So there was a guy, a big guy, he was just trying something in the keyboard, and that's when he found out this feature. So that's how we got to know about that. So it's available in 2010 as well. Most of the things I'm going to talk about here is available in 2010 as well, especially for that feature. So why do you require the breakpoints like this? Say you have attached your project to a process, and then it's loading the solution, adding symbols and everything, and then you go, you know what, I should have added a breakpoint to some method. So you can just type that method name here, class name dot method name, hit F9, and fingers crossed you'll get a breakpoint there. So at runtime it probably will help you, but if not, if you have that solution open, you're just better off scrolling down to it, or the file open, you're just better off scrolling down and adding the breakpoint yourself.
Comes with intelligence or you need to remember it?
No, this does not come with IntelliSense. There are other things that come with IntelliSense, right? So it's not just limited to files inside your solution. It opens pretty much anything, right? So anything that Visual Studio supports, it can open, right? This can. How many of you have used the command window? Not many. So command window is kind of cool, right? So you'll get all these things. If you're a non-mouse kind of a person, you can do all these things. Let me open a couple more files, and then command window, I can just do close all, right? So it's kind of nice to have another. Oh, I didn't open another.
Similar to Visual Studio power tools?
Yes. So what Microsoft does is every year they look at. I accidentally clicked on another solution. So what Microsoft does is every year they look at most of these most popular plugins that are available, and they see which ones are the ones that are very frequently used, and they try to see if they can import it into Visual Studio. So power tools, productivity tools, those are some of those features do get added into Visual Studio on every release. Right, so your find window can become command window. All you have to do is that, right? So if you see the prompt here, it's that greater than symbol. So that, and now I just get everything, right? So I'm getting everything. So to answer your question, there is kind of IntelliSense. So OF is open file, and look at that. I start typing, and then it gives me IntelliSense, right? So in this way, it's not directly, but indirectly there is IntelliSense available. But
for this feature especially, when opening the file, if you do control comma and enter the file name.
Navigate.
Yeah, control
Right.
comma and open. Yeah.
Yes.
You don't have to give that command as well.
Yeah, I agree.
Also, it's
I
not
agree.
case sensitive.
Yep, that I agree. And no, even here it's not case sensitive. For file names, it's not case sensitive. Only for adding breakpoints, it's case sensitive. For file names, no, it's not case sensitive, right? And for control comma, the issue with this is that it's a blocking window, right? It's kind of blocking the entire view for you. I mean, you can start typing and it'll give you right, it'll give you all those things, but it's still a blocking window, right? So that's that feature. Now I'll just keep going. If you guys have any questions, and Venkata is monitoring the I am. So if you guys have any questions, just stop me. I'll just keep going. Now this is not the next one I'm going to talk about is not a Visual Studio feature. It's kind of a Windows feature. So say I'm trying to open a file, right, that does not exist, and it gives me a message box here saying, you know, I don't know what file you're talking about, so I cannot open it. So I mean, in this case, it's pretty obvious what it's telling, but at times you would want the text of that one, right? So it will be helpful because you can just copy and paste and do a Google search, but I cannot click and paste, right? So what I can do instead is make that as the active window. Press Control C. I just did Control C, Control V on an active window, and especially on a not an active window, on a message box. I just copied it and I went back to my notepad and pasted it. So as I said, this is not a Visual Studio feature. It's kind of Windows, right? So again, I do Control C and I'm pasting that, right? So before you guys came, I tried to open a path that does not exist, and again, I'm just doing Control C. I got the entire message of that window. So it's useful. Sometime back my link was having issues, especially when I click on join link meeting. It was throwing some rmvr176.dll, whatever is missing. It took me some time to actually read it, go back and do some switching, and then I said, you know what, I'm not doing this, I'm just copying and pasting it and then searching it. So it's an easier way to copy text from a message box. It's kind of limited to a message box, I guess. Right? So let me close all the unwanted stuff. All right. So the next one is copy cycle board. All right. So at times you would want to do this, right? You want to copy stuff from. Let me minimize that. Some real estate. Okay. So I'm copying line 1. I'm copying couple more lines, and I'm copying one more. Right. So now I've copied 3 lines in there. So obviously if I do Control V, I'm just copying the last one. I'm just pasting the last one. But what if I wanted to, go through the other ones? So I can do Control Shift Insert. I'm just holding Control Shift and I'm pressing Insert now. So that's the previous one before, and it just cycles through. These are all the copies that I did before, right? So this way you can just make all copies in one file, go to your destination and start pasting them in order. So okay, how do I know that it's Control Shift Insert? So tools, options, environment, open, and keyboard. So this feature is called as cycling the clipboard ring. That's what this feature is called. I have 2 shortcuts associated with that: Control Shift Insert and Control Shift V. And I have ReSharper shortcuts enabled. So paste multiple also has Control Shift V. So ReSharper takes over Control Shift V, and so it doesn't give Control Shift V for Visual Studio. But what happens if I do Control Shift V is that ReSharper gives this window. It shows the first line in the top one, the bottom one shows the complete text. So you can just scroll and pick and choose whatever you want and then paste it. Yeah, Control Shift V will work, or I don't know, whatever is it. So you can just go there and look for cycle, search for cycle, and you'll get to know what shortcuts are associated. If it's not, you can always assign one, right? So I can just do Control Shift 9 if I wanted to, right? So you can just assign that.
So can we directly go to like the second copy where your third copy is Control Shift plus V plus 1?
No, that we can't.
Keyboard, I think there is some.
I don't think so. But how many keys are you planning to hold at one time, right? That's a problem. So Control Shift, left Control, right Shift, F Insert, F2, and then G. Yeah, there you go. That's what you something like that. I don't know. So that's your cycling the clipboard. Next one is okay. At times, so what you do is, let me copy a new line here. At times you've copied something, you go to a new line, and instead of pressing Control V for paste, you accidentally press Control C. I think I pressed Control X as well. And then you're like, oh no, that's not what I wanted to do. And then you do Control V, but what you get is that line, right? That's kind of annoying. So you'll have to go back all the way, and then okay, I'm going to copy this, and then there's this. That is really annoying for me.
Just need to add, well, selecting, right? No need to select, just put a cursor.
Yeah, you can do that. Yeah, you can do that one too. You don't have to select the entire line. So there is a command. There is an option here: apply cut or copy commands to blank lines when there is no selection. I'm like, no, I don't want to cut and copy blank lines ever, right? So you can disable that per language based on what language you have here. Or I mean, I just like to disable for every language, right? So I just do an okay. I'm going to copy something new here. I'm going to come to my destination. Now I'm doing Control C multiple times, and then I do Control V. So there you go. So it doesn't copy empty lines. I'm not sure why it's on by default, because why would you copy and paste an empty line? You just press enter. That's the fastest way, right? So I don't know why it's on by default. It should be off by default. I think we would have never known if it was off by default. So next one is immediate and watch windows. So let me just start this. So how many of you have used the immediate window? I know you guys use the watch window, but how many of you have used the immediate window? So what's the difference between the two? You have to be loud. Any known differences? Anything that's obvious, that stands out, kind of thing?
Yeah, but when you debug keywords, when you want to find the value of a particular variable,
Right.
that's when you're using immediate, but you can't use the command window.
No. I'm talking about watch and
Watch
immediate.
Watch you can't do any
Right? What do you mean auto?
One of them has
Assign a variable.
every time there is a value change, one of them shows the value, but I don't know which one. I think watch may go whenever there is a value change.
Okay. Well, I've never explored all of those, but there are two things pretty obvious here. So here's what the code is doing, right? I have a customer handler here. I'm going in and there is an adder I've written here. It's just adding two integers, and I've added some junk text here uh, just to make the method a little meaty, and it returns the sum after doing a bunch of for loops, right? So I have a home controller. Inside that I have a customer handler. Well, the home controller calls the customer handler calls the adder method, just to make it a little complicated. And you're seeing that the breakpoint has stopped here, line 13 at this one. So, but if I wanted to see if my logic is fine, right? So I've written this new adder method, or this new add method is what I've written, and I want to verify that. So I'm in the watch window, and I want to create a new instance of add and say, it won't let me create a new instance because it says, I'll just read out the text here. Declaration statements are only allowed in the immediate window, right? So that's the first difference. You cannot create new instances in the watch window, but I can do that, and it tells me the type of it, right? So it tells me the type of the class. So it says some library adder method is there in the some library project. So it's there, and now I can go ahead and use that one there, right? Actually, I can just do that and says, yeah, it exists, and I can do that. Okay, it gives me the sum, right? Now, what happens if I run the same thing in the immediate window? Let's come back here. Now, my controller, my breakpoint is in the home controller. So I come here in the immediate window, I've pasted, put a semicolon there, and when I hit enter, look at that, it actually took us to the adder method, right? So watch window does not respect your breakpoints, immediate does. So the benefit of this is, especially in cases where you have multiple steps to go to that final piece, you don't have to wait till that one. You can just come inside your immediate window and test if that logic is working, and if it's not, you're better off stopping your debugging session, making all the changes, and run the project again. So this one kind of gives, so let's just go through this one. So b is less than 3, it gives me the answer, right? So in the immediate window, and look at that, your breakpoint is back now. So it came back to the same place where you started. So it's like immediate window gives you a loan, or loans you another debug session. It's kind of like that. So it loans you another debug session, especially for that specific method. As soon as it's done, it comes back to the same place, right? So that's the difference between immediate, and that's other differences. I mean, you guys gave some points there. The other thing is, anything that you create in immediate window is actually that it has a dollar in the back, but I think Visual Studio just helps or makes it easier for us to skip the dollar sign. If not, most of the things that CLR creates, it has a dollar sign behind it, right? So this one was created by CLR for us, so that's why that's why a dollar and without the dollar sign makes the same difference, right? And one more thing, I don't even know why this is useful. You can just do user $user, and it tells you the current user's details, right? So username, of course, you know all of these things. This one I don't even know why you would require, but something that I found interesting was, so these are all the groups I'm a part of. I no clue why it's required, but there it is. If you ever want to know what group you're in, you can just take a snapshot from there, right? So that's the difference. Those are the differences I want to point out. Let me stop this. Let's go to. I have an index file here. So 2012. I'm not sure if it was there with 2010. There is this feature called browse with in 2010. Okay, but can you do this? Right, so you can select multiple browsers at a time and say just show me how it looks like in each of them, right? Now the downside is still that if you make any changes, you'll have to individually come to each browser and update it. But at least there is a one-shot place. I mean, all your browsers are up and running now. You just had to select them once, and subsequent times you're just doing a refresh. Yes, yes, that's what I thought it was. This is 20. No, this is not 2013. This is 20. This is all 2012. Everything I'm showing here is 2012. Right? So that works for files, right? But what about if I want to run for what about if I want to run the home controller, the index? You don't get that option there, but what you can do is see the small drop down there, you can select browse with from there, right? So I'm just going to select two of them, and then when I go to browse, it loads the actual MVC application in two of the browsers, the two that I selected, right? So browse with is a nice feature, especially when you're doing when you want to check cross-browser functionality. Browse with is a nice feature. You can select multiple, load them all once. 2013 is coming up with a new feature. It's called as browser link. So when you open multiple browsers like this, Visual Studio knows how many browsers are open. So as and when you make changes to, let's say the index HTML is what is open, as and when I make changes, your browsers are updated automatically. They're doing it in 2013. But 2012, you can just load all of them and say, okay, this is how it looks on the page.
When you browse with multiple browsers and you try to debug, what does it where does it
Each of them get their own sessions, right? I mean, your Visual Studio will be kind of messed up because it's just running commands, but you won't be refreshing all three browsers, right? You'll probably just attach it to the W3 process and then refresh one of the browsers and see it. And if it works fine on one, then you'll refresh the others. If you update all three of them, it's like you're giving three commands to the debug. Yeah, that will be confusing.
It will be 3 times traversing the code.
Right. That's basically what will happen. And in different orders. So if it's especially if you never know which browser is which request.
Are they going to, whatever issue we are discussing, are they going to look into that issue?
What is that?
Just like multiple browser.
Yeah, it's already there. It's already there. 2013 is out and it's already there. 2013 is RTM. No, it's done through. I mean, it's out of scope of this discussion, but it's done through something called as JavaScript and SignalR. So SignalR helps you create WebSockets and things like that. So Visual Studio is using WebSockets to talk to browsers, and browsers are communicating back. So I make a change on the browser, it updates my HTML file, and vice versa. So it's all real time. You don't have to press any button anywhere. So yeah, so that's browser link. I mean, it's pretty cool. I mean, browser link is pretty cool. Right. So next one is this new feature called as, let me close a bunch of files here. Opening. So there is a new feature called as oops, I need that. Okay. So view in page inspector, right? So by default, I mean, folks online, I'm really sorry if it's too small. I can make this text a little bigger if you want. Right? So this is debugging inside Visual Studio, right? So I can your web tools or dev tools. That's what this is. So look at that. I'm just hovering over that, and it's giving me, this is the section. And what's even more cool is, so when I go to inspect, so that's the button I'm talking about, right? So that's the button. So the moment I go there, look at that. It's not only selecting the bottom part, the DOM element, on your source page, it's telling where this content is coming from. This is all live, right? So I'm just hovering over text, and it is changing it dynamically, right? So for we'll look at the MVC version of this one a little bit. It tells you exactly where the section is coming from, and especially when you have, sorry.
You need to keep your file open. That file
It'll open it by default. It'll open it by default. The only irritating part of that is it'll open it on the left side. I'm sorry, on the right side. So it'll actually overlap on your page inspector. Then you'll have to drag and drop it to the whatever side. I don't know if there is a way to say keep page inspector on top always kind of thing. I don't know if there is a feature like that. But this is pretty cool. Now what's even more cool is this. You can do all your changes here, right? So you've got I don't know how to get to that one now. Let me make this window bigger.
What was the shortcut for that?
I don't know. I didn't use the shortcut. I just went there, and Control KG by default is View in Inspector, right? So you can then go. I can't even tab up across this one. Okay, so you can add attributes. You can change styles. You can do pretty much anything that you did with. So I'm going to make this red and that text.
So this is a residual list. Let's say there are multiple cases applied to a particular page.
Yes.
One coming from.
Yes, it will.
Change something over here. Will it?
No, it won't. It won't. It won't. So that's what I was talking about. The browser link will do that. This one is just one way from Visual Studio to that browser. So the next version they're planning to do that one, right? So you can change all the stuff here. You can go to your trace styles and see where it's coming from. You can do a lot of stuff that your dev tools are doing. So you can do it just without even leaving Visual Studio, right? The cool thing, the real cool thing. Okay, let me. Sure.
Suppose one page is calling the other thing, like in which is another ASPX page and CSH page. So
We'll do that. We'll do that. Give me just a second.
Yeah, sure.
So let me just refresh this. I don't want the red on that one. Okay. So what this page is actually doing, I should have told that before, is it loads that content and then there is a JS file here that says upon file loading. Once JS is ready, download a text file, parse it, and add the text into a div and show it to or append it to that content. So that's why you're seeing those two green lines there. That's coming from the text, and then there is a link there that says add more. So if I click on that, what it says is just adds another div to it. So just keeping a little dynamic, Now, the real cool part is this, right? So look, so that is a chocolate color now, right? So just keep seeing what happens. I typed it. I didn't even save the file and it's already updated. I have not saved that. The CSS file is not yet saved, right? So let me do that again. It is live. It is actually listening to what you're doing. That's the CSS part, right? Only the CSS part is in sync now, and that's what those double arrows are telling me the same thing. So it says CSS auto sync, right? So I can change other stuff here. I can say the div gets the two divs in grayish background. I just typed a number and said make the margin higher, and it just did it live, right? So I can test things much faster on this way to see where my CSS fits, what my sprites are looking like. If I have to move the sprites icon, the coordinates a little left or right, whatever, right? This is the fastest way to do it. Let me switch back to chocolate. There you go. So this is all static content, right? So static content, it's telling where it's coming from, right? So what about those two dynamic ones? Oh, one more thing. So when I hover over something, some DOM element, it gives me the DOM name, like div.maroon is what it's showing there. I don't know if you can see it on the screen there. This small tab thing on top, and it's given a blue border around it, right? So then it's doing that. So it gives it for everything. So it says button hash content 1 because the button DOM element has an ID of things. So it's what I can do is this. Let me stop inspecting, and look, I can just start selecting here, and I don't know if you can see, but there is a small selection happened here, right? You can see that, right? ORE is selected on the page, and you're seeing that ORE selected here, right? So now you know exactly where the text is coming from. And I can do more. I can even do the other way. So if I select on the HTML page, it's actually showing me what is it that I'm going to change. on the actual web page, right? So this is all nice for the static content. What about the dynamic content? Those two green lines. What about them? Right now, the moment I've clicked on inspect, and the moment I go over that, it actually takes me to the JavaScript file and tells me what JavaScript command actually added that onto the page. Right. So on page load, it is that HTML output.join. That is what added this whole div, these two divs onto my page. Right. So the same thing with the second one. So it tells me, look, that is exactly what added this line to the page. So a lot of times when we are trying to debug, where is this HTML coming from, where is this segment coming from, it just shows you live without much hassle, right? So I'll go and then click add more, right? So that's added the third line for me. Now if I go and inspect that, it takes me to that line because that's a new line. So it's the register click event line that's adding it. So it actually takes me to that line. Right. So if you're wondering how all of this magic is happening, let me make this smaller. Okay, so this is your IE engine, right? The menu should make it familiar. Now when I do a view source, okay, good. So you see it has added some metadata here, right? So for every div, so for every tag, for every HTML DOM element, it's added an ID equals underscore underscore ID equals some number, and then there's this big script here that gets injected, right? That's a script that gets injected, and then you'll see that the IDs have continued all the way till the last one, right? So what it's doing is this: when the HTML is being generated, right, it's putting placeholders saying, okay, this HTML came from this place, this HTML came from this place, and it also keeps track of the JavaScript files. So that's basically what it's doing. And this one is only in the page inspector. It's not on your browser. So once you go to the browser, that piece of information, that entire script block and the underscore underscore ID will not get rendered. It's only in the script page. So you're not cluttering your final HTML except for during the debug window. What are the requirements for this? So first one is that debugging must be enabled. Right? If you have debugging disabled, then the page inspector will not work. It'll actually give you a message saying you'll have to enable that. Or if you have, or you can do it in the app settings saying page inspector : server code mapping support should be set to enable. Right? Either one of those two. It should be a 4.0 or later, and the last two are taken care by Visual Studio itself. When Visual Studio was probably in initial stages, Page Inspector was a new feature that you had to manually add. I think later updates said no, actually even Visual Studio 2012 came with it. So in the preview versions or whatever, you had to add this extra plugin, but now it comes as part of Visual Studio, so you don't have to do the last two parts. You just have to make sure that it's debugging is enabled and it's 4.0 or later, right? So that's Page Inspector. It's really powerful. I mean, you can do a lot of stuff with pretty much anything. So what if I want to go back to, and Anusha started this question, what if I wanted to go back to my actual HTML page? Well, on the controller you don't see it, but I'm going to my view. I'm saying on the contact, I'm saying view in Page Inspector, and it's smart enough to know that, oh yeah, this is part of a controller / action, and it takes me to that URL directly. Right? Obviously, it cannot just load the view on all by itself. It's not an HTML or a typical ASPX page. It's part of a controller action. So Page Inspector is smart enough to take me directly. It generates that URL for me, right? And here you have the same rules here, right? So I can just say div, right? I can add an attribute saying style, right? So everything is right aligned now. Right, so you can do all of this with page molecules, or sorry, not page molecules, with an HTML page or an web forms page or MVC page. And one of the things that I think Anusha asked is, what if it is doing it from multiple places? Look at that. So it's opened the contact CSS HTML now, and if I go to the index. Right, so it load the layout HTML as well. So let me just go down. there. So Anusha, to answer your question, it's taking you to the parent page and then saying, okay, that section is what is rendering the piece. It doesn't actually go deep inside it, but at least you get a general idea as to where to go for debugging or finding out where exactly that piece is coming from, right? So that is Page Inspector. Any questions so far on anything? Going fast, going slow? I don't know.
This server-side code is not the only the client side.
Well, the execution piece is completely the browser-based. Browser is doing all of that for you, right? So if I click on, I think I have some links here. I don't know if they're valid links. Okay, so that is all server-side. That's not a client-side thing. So the actual call went to the server. And then again on the return, it says, okay, Page Inspector is the one that's doing this call. So I'll have to create that meta document again. So if I do a view source on this, again, you have the same stuff, right? That big script is there with you. So does that answer your question?
If any breakpoints are there, so it
No. Page Inspector does not. This is just, so look at that, right? So I loaded my home controller, right? I went to the index action method. There was a breakpoint, but it didn't stop. It doesn't stop at breakpoints because it's not a debug thing. It's more of a view thing. So it's looking at your page and seeing where the content is coming from rather than debug and see what exactly changes on the page. That is not the purpose of Page Inspector. Fair enough?
One more tool, graphical debugging, view code, view documents. It will graphically show all the classes, methods in some sort of chart, and as and when you are debugging, it will render those graphs and show you the class structures.
Hey, are you talking about
Code map, right?
code map kind of a thing, right? That's there in Visual Studio. I don't know where it is.
That's a code map.
Shown code map.
That
Yeah.
is 2013, 2012 picture.
22 also.
Right. So it's yeah. Right. Close that. Okay. Let me get rid of that.
about the instructor, if there is any server-side errors, then it will be executed.
It'll still load the same page. Whatever you get on the browser, it'll still load the same page, right? But that's a good question. So it'd be really nice if, I don't know if it does it. So on the server side error, let's say you're doing a divide by zero exception, right? And then you get that exception. When you hover over the exception stack, if it takes you directly to the code where it's throwing it, that would be really nice, but I'm not sure. I'm not sure if it does that one. So, but yeah, that's an interesting thing. You can just put your comments on user voice or someplace, right? All right, so next up, I have this plugin called, no, wrong place. I have this plugin called, come on, Web Essentials. This is really powerful, really useful if you're doing HTML, CSS, JavaScript kind of work. So by default, if you do div, now if I put the closing, whatever, yeah, so it fills up the rest of the things for me, right? That Visual Studio does or ReSharper does, I don't know. But what if I want even more leaner code? I just do div and I do a tab, it fills in the rest of it for me, right? You can do it for, and then this is actually a Visual Studio feature. So if I convert the ending tag, it will convert the starting as well for me, right? Starting or ending, Visual Studio is doing this. This is not Web Essentials. But I mean, that's not really useful feature, right? I mean, it just does the parent. What about if I want to do li? Look at that, it put the cursor right in between li because that is exactly where I have to be, right? You can also do a little bit of math, right? Now, here is a cool feature, right? Now, the cursor is in between that, right? I do a tab, it takes me exactly to the next place. I type in more, it takes me to that, and then I'm like, you know what, the second one is incorrect, so let me do shift tab, go back and change it, right? So it's really useful. Web Essentials make things really useful. It's a lot more powerful. It's not done yet.
Working in a word file.
Right, so it's IntelliSense, it knows exactly, and it doesn't do it for, it does it only for valid HTML tags, right? So if I do pane and do a tab, it doesn't know that pane is a valid HTML, so it'll just use the default behavior, right? So I can do div. This is kind of cool. So I can do div hash content3. Cool, right? I mean, it knows that hash means for an ID. Okay, let me come back to UL again. I say 5, and there have been times when you want to just put dummy text in there, right? Just to create a proof of concept on the page. So you know this lorem ipsum text that's there in a lot of places. So what you can do is just type lorem. There, your UL is completely ready now. What if you're like, oh, that's too long a text, I don't want so many words. You can just put a number of words there, it'll give you those number of words. Right? So that's your navigation there, right? If you wanted to create a navigation, that's your navigation ready. Right? So this is all done by Web Essentials. Now, here's the coolest thing you can do, right? So table hash t1 tr dot. So I want my row to be in striped. I want 5 rows. Td dot hover. I want a class of hover on that, and then I do that. Look at that. Your entire table is ready, and you can actually populate it by saying lorem2. There you go. Right? How many lines? How many actually characters did you type to get that table ready? Right? So if you're doing, that's what I said. If you're doing, and the tab still works. Look at that. It still takes you in between the text only. It doesn't take you anywhere outside that, right? So it gave me 15 columns, whatever, rows and columns, totally 15, right? So you can do IDs and all of those things, right? You can do a little bit of math. So that's Web Essentials on the HTML side. Let's go to the.
Turn off this feature.
Yeah, you can uninstall that plugin. No, we just uninstall. Well, actually, I don't know. Maybe there is something. So once you install that in Tools Options, you're getting Web Essentials. There are some things here, right? There are some things here which you can play with. There are some settings you have. You can do JSInt. We'll just look at that in a few. CSS, you say auto close, curly braces, whatever, right? Enables pre-typing. You can just play with these settings. Right? So you can easily manipulate, create, do all those things, right? So on the CSS side, okay, CSS is based on specificity, right? So ID rules get the most priority, right? They override everything else, followed by classes, followed by tags, and the last one is the star, the universal one. Most of the times it's discouraged to use star. You're better off using something else. But in order to know this, all I had to do was once I installed Web Essentials, I just hover over it and it gives me the selector specificity. So it's like 100 points, right, for an ID rule, right? And for your link, it's like 10 points. And I have a div here that gets 1 point, and my universal doesn't get any because it's overridden by everything, right? So that's what it is. So you just know this now just by hovering over this stuff, right? What if you're writing a property and you're concerned, hey, is this supported in all browsers, right? All you have to do is hover over that property and it'll tell you, right? Oh yeah, look at that. Font size, yes, of course. Margin, sure. White space, yep. What about word wrap? Oh, look at that. It's telling me that I'm missing some vendor specific properties for word wrap. So it gives me the option to add it, and once I add it, I hover back. Then it says, okay, now it's supported in all of them. And if I wanted IE's 8 support, I had to add MS word wrap.
This is CSS3 property, right?
Yeah, all of these. Yeah, these things are, even the transform is a CSS3 property. So transform is missing some vendor specifics. So I go ahead and add them, and then I hover over it. It says, okay, transform is supported by Firefox 16, IE 10, Opera 12.5, and WebKit gives me for Opera 12, Safari 3.1, and Chrome. Right?
This feature only for CSS. It will also apply for HTML elements. Like suppose you have taken the.
I don't think so. I don't think this.
Section or something. You are working with the.
Nope, it doesn't. It's only for CSS. Good question.
Is there any deprecated tags for HTML?
No, that's not. No, it won't suggest that.
Canvas section. Just check.
Not now. I don't have time now. I'm running out of time. Okay. So there is one more thing. You can right click. I mean, this property, this menu option comes up on pretty much every page. Sort all properties. I don't think it is sort. It's actually grouping. So let's look at that. So here I have color and then background, and here it's all messed up. I have word wrap. I have background color in the way bottom. So I can just do Web Essentials, sort all properties. So look at that. It is sorting. It's actually not sorting, it's grouping. So they have a rule set on this one that says that location ones, the location rules are placed at the top, right? Followed by text rules. So color and text aligner, text properties, and then followed by font, right? So that's what it does. So that's why you're seeing, you're like, why is margin at the top? That's because the rule set says all layout related ones should be at the top, all text should be next, and then font is last. So even this one was sorted, and you see that it keeps the vendor specifics together. That way it doesn't get jumbled anywhere. So same way, right? So word wrap is a text property, and font comes after that, right? And then you have your transform at the very bottom, right? So it's more like a grouping. I mean, you got to get to know that this is the grouping. Then it makes sense. The reason why it makes sense is before you check in your CSS, you just sort it and then check in. That way everyone maintains the same kind of hierarchy or the ordering of rule set. That's kind of useful. More on them is you can now say, you can do this on the JavaScript side as well. So I'm going to select these two. I'm going to right click on them. Look at that. It says either minify or, you know what, I'll just create a bundle. So I'm calling it bundle one. And it creates a file called .bundle, and it's pure XML that's saying minify is true and run on build, and the output file is that, and that is the order in which the CSS files have to be stored, right? So if we go back, there, that's my CSS and that's my minified version. So it gives it. Let me just open them.
Minified like optimized CSS?
No, CSS cannot be optimized, right? I mean, you cannot change div to D. JavaScript, yeah, you can do
Bundling and modification.
obfuscation. Obfuscation can be done for JavaScript, not for CSS.
No, not optimization. Let's say margin top and then margin left, margin right. Instead, you can use.
Oh no, it doesn't do that. No, it doesn't do that. No.
Other than removing the space and lines.
So it's just creating whatever you have in here, right? So I have those two files open. I'm just going to change the color. Although it said run on build as true, the moment I save, it says, you know, bundle one is modified, yes, and then bundle is also modified. So if I go there, look at that, right? So just saving the file updates them, and it's telling here that definitely run it on build, right? Whether you did it on save or not, but definitely do it on build. That way you get the latest one. You can do the same thing for your JavaScript files as well. So if you're using, if you're creating pure HTML applications, then this is a nice way to go. If not, you'll usually end up using, let me show that. I think I still have that. You'll end up using the MVC, and both MVC and web forms come up with this bundle config where you can add files and say, you know, just bundle all of these things together and then create one file kind of thing. So you'd rather use this one, but if you're going to create a pure HTML file, then Web Essentials make it really easy for us. Okay, there are other features with okay, my time is up. There are other features in the JavaScript side, but I'm going to skip that. The next one is I'm going to switch to TFS. I'm going to make it a little bigger. Right, so there are some shortcuts that are available. You know that you can just press a number here, hit enter, and it will bring up that item, right? So what about that? Things like, what it's telling is A is the shortcut for assign to, colon is contains at me. So assign to contains me. That's what it's looking for. And there you go. There's one item assigned in this project. I mean, there are very less items here, right? Well, if don't get too excited. If you are doing this day in day out, you're probably doing it wrong. So what you would rather do is run it once, open it as a query, and then save that query. Right? You're better off doing it that way because the query is pre-compiled and all those things. No, I don't want to say those. So you can do a lot of this, right? So result date is yesterday. You can just do that. Let me switch to something that has more items. Okay, so that one does result date of yesterday. So T is type, work item type is a requirement, and created by contains Ramesh. That's what it's looking for, right? So let's just wait for this. It'll come back with all the items that Ramesh created. What? Any contains Ramesh. It just says contains Ramesh, right? So that's what it's doing. So there you go. It gives you icons here. So the push pin is actually a requirement. We'll see the other ones. This one is another one.
The scope level of all these queries is to the project.
No. Well, what do you mean to the project? See, it's actually parsing your text here. So it's saying work item type equals requirement created by contains Ramesh. It's not saying per application or whatever. You will have to add those extra things. If you wanted to limit, we'll see the query for that one. If you wanted to limit for a particular application or whatever, you will have to add that. So this one says type is a defect, and you're seeing that hyphen there. I just copied it here. So hyphen s colon. So it says status does not contain active, right? So that's what. So there is an MSDN article. I've added that link in the PowerPoint. You can go over different combinations. So there. So these are all the defects that are not in active state. Right? That's what the query parsed it as. Work item type equals defect and state does not contain active. Right? So that's what it's doing. You can do resolved by, and I think this is what you were asking. Shwini, look at that. Created date was yesterday, and area is learn. Area path is learn. Right? So the last one, there is nothing in there. The last one. So if you don't provide any key colon whatever you don't provide, it's actually going to take that as a string. So it's going to search for a string called content in the title, description, and the repro steps. I should have started that. And I'm saying the application is CMS, right? So they should come up with some values. I mean, and I'm not even saying what status it is, what type it is, or anything. It should just come up with a big list of items. So that's a defect. Just by seeing the icons, you'll get to know that's a requirement, that's a feature, that's a task. So just by looking at the items here, you can know what it is. So it's kind of easy. You can just type in the query, and then you can open it as a query. If you're going to do this in day out real soon, I mean, if you're going to use it very frequently, this is a better way. So if I go back and edit the query, you will see exactly the same thing. So team project is project, title contains whatever, description contains, repro steps contains, and application contains, right? So that's what it's parsing it as. Easier way to do one-off queries rather than let me find out I have to write a new query every time kind of thing. You don't have to do that every time.
Is there a way, like, whenever we complete a task and try to check in some code and associate with that task, can we also supply that with the number of hours that we have put into the task? And
update it directly?
Yeah.
Not that I'm aware of. Yeah, what I usually do is separate tasks. I update the hours and then check in, or the other way around. Right? That is a nice feature though. Just when I'm doing a check-in.
You don't have to go and update the task.
Exactly. Right. So you don't have to do that. So yeah, that is a nice thing. That is a. So the last one is TFS, as in Team Foundation Service. So what we have been using is a Team Foundation server, right? So there is actually a physical server somewhere in Dell location probably. This is a cloud-based source control, right? This is one. This is Team Foundation service. So this is a service you can do pretty much anything you do with Visual Studio TFS. So it works with Eclipse and Visual Studio. This is for your personal projects. You can do code reviews, merges. You can do your agile planning, capacity planning, all those things. Pretty much anything you can do with TFS, the server, you can do with the service. There are more. Yeah, you can.
GitHub also, right?
Yes, this one supports GitHub also. TFS now supports GitHub also, and they can actually link. You can actually link TFS to talk to GitHub. You can do all of that, right? You can create your build scripts. You can do continuous unit testing. So as soon as you check in something, the build will run your unit tests. So what
Only 5 users.
exactly? What does it cost? It's actually free for 5 users. And if I'm not wrong, last year that said 2012. So they're still in the plan of how to create a pricing plan. So I don't think they'll ever remove the free plan. So look at that. It says unlimited number of projects. So there's no limitation on space. You can
Windows 8 become popular. You can keep this.
yeah. So all you have to do is it's free sign up. You just have to give your whatever name you want to, the handle you want to create. Come on, load.
I think it's not blocked by that.
It's really nice. I mean, I can access, and you'll see my source control here, my TFS service source control. If it all this comes up. Come on. I think I lost network. Okay, so that's what it is, right? So you can do. So that will be a username. That will be your path. awesomecoder.visualstudio.com. It will be associated with your live ID, and once you're done with everything, you can just go back, connect it. It'll just take a couple of minutes now. So you can check in pretty much anything. They're not even checking whether you're checking in only this one. You can actually check in your marriage album or whatever. So, but just don't plan to do source control over your marriage photos. So, right click compare with kind of
Is this
thing.
location synced to your local disk?
Yes.
Okay. So can you go to that particular location and right click? You will find a Visual Studio.
I have not installed that, but I'll show you what I usually do. I entered my password right. Okay.
From Internet Explorer, you can have all the Visual Studio like check-in, check-out. If you don't want to open up the Visual Studio.
Yes, you can do all of that. Pretty much anything, exactly anything you can do with. So let me open. Okay, so here is the source control, and those are all my projects, right? So this is your code. You can and let me show you, sir. And just to answer your question there, I have linked it to a workspace. So that is marked to a special location on the folder on my box. And then what I usually do is, and this is for EDEL, what I usually do is I have just one path, right? So instead of going to each project and trying to get latest, I have this shortcut, the tf.exe, the console one, and I pass the parameter of get. So it gets me the latest of every project. So every morning.
Right click there, and the same location here.
Here.
Outside, no, on the blank area.
I don't have that. I don't have that. Yeah, that is also a nice one. It'll show you right here on the folder whether it is updated, whether you have pending changes or all those things. Yeah, that's there. And that one.
All the Team Explorer functionality will get it here.
Yes.
Check in, check out.
True. Yep, you'll get all of those things, right? So that's the end of my session. I've added the links for Web Essentials, the TFS shortcut, and Team Foundation server on the PPT, which I'll be sharing in a few. Any questions? I know I'm out of time here, but any questions you can stop by, email, ping, whatever. Okay, guys, I'm stopping recording now and presentation. Thanks a lot for your time.
No questions, please.